The OWP is often referred to as the blueprint for your project or as a standalone document. The OWP will mirror your implementation plan by outlining what needs to be done, by whom, and by when.
All right. So the OWP is worth a maximum of 15 points, and it starts on page 67 in the training manual, if you're following along. When you start working on your OWP, you want to make sure that all your framework elements, the ANA framework elements, are the same as what was presented in the narrative. So whatever framework elements are in the OWP should be mirrored in your narrative. That means the project goal identified in the approach should be the same as the one found in the OWP. To do this, we encourage you to copy and paste from your project narrative to your OWP, just so you have the wording exactly the same. We don't want you to be creative or paraphrase elements between the different components of the application. We want it to be streamlined so that the reviewers, it's easily identifiable to the reviewers. The OWP is a standalone document. It is sometimes, as Dawn said, is referred to as the project blueprint for a reason. It's basically like the Cliff Notes version of your project. Each OWP should have no more than 25 milestone activities. These are the key tasks needed to successfully complete each of your objectives. And this does not include the required activities that we'll describe in a moment. The milestone activities should relate to the objective and to the project. If an activity is discussed in the approach section of the application, then you should find it in the OWP as well. Each output should be directly tied to a milestone activity and be supported by the completion of the corresponding activity. Also, to be included in the OWP are administrative activities that are required by ANA, and these activities will be discussed more in detail in a later slide.
Okay, let's begin objective work plan. Okay, as we've mentioned a couple of times already, might as well mention it again. The OWP is the blueprint for project implementation and execution. It's ANA's format for applicants to use in describing how, when, and by whom a project will be implemented and should align with the project's narrative. If an activity is discussed in the approach section of the application, then you should find it in the OWP. I know we've repeated this pretty often, but it is that important, really, so bear with us. Okay, a well-crafted OWP documents how implementing activities will lead to achieving project objectives and how achieving the objectives will accomplish the project goal directly address the current community condition. In total, an applicant should have one OWP form per objective per year. This means that the applicant can have a maximum of 9 individual OWP forms. However, similar to the early discussion on the logical sequence of objectives, the OWP should follow that same rule. So the way that you planned out your objectives, when we talked about that yesterday, is going to be you're going to need an OWP form for each objective per year where it shows up in your project. Okay, so what's new in 2020 for the OWP is that you are able to upload the Word version of your OWP should you prefer. There really are 3 options this year. There is, like we mentioned, the OMB Word document in the picture on the right of your slide, and the other 2 options were the ones that's available through the grants.gov workspace. There are 2 forms available in grants.gov. There's the web form, which is shown here in the screenshot on the left. It's not a pretty picture, but that's exactly what you see when you open up the objective work plan in grants.gov. And then there's also a link that you can click on, which will give you a downloadable version of the OWP that's also considered an electronic form. And it's, I don't have a picture of it now, but it's usually the yellow one with the yellow fields and the red lines around it. So that is the other option. So you have the web form, you have the yellow electronic form, and now there is the Word document that you can fill out for your OWP. You only need to do one of these options. The reason for allowing the Word version was that many people were having trouble switching between the Word document, cutting and pasting, using the Word document as a draft, they cut and paste, and then putting it into electronic form, which was required last year. And people said that it was just too difficult. So ANA was being responsive to those listening to the applicants, and then they made the Word version allowable for your application. So the Word document is available in the handout downloads on your GoToWebinar handout window. And what you would do is make sure that the OWP has the up-to-date OMB approval stamp. I just click the red circle there. If it's a current OMB stamp on it, then what this means is that it is considered a required form, and your OWP won't be deducted from your 150-page limit. It'll be exempt from that. So you could have, some people have up to 10 pages in their OWP. So that's a really good thing to know, that if you use this form with the correct stamp on it, and you don't make any changes to the form, the only thing you should be changing is adding activity lines and output lines, those fields on the bottom. You keep adding those and you're fine. But some people take liberties and they change the other required formats across the top, like they don't include an objective, or they take out the outcome, or they do something else. They might add a field. Once you make those changes, it is no longer considered OMB approved. And then your OWP will be counted towards your page limit. It's all very technical, I know, but hopefully my explanation was clear enough. If not, we can visit this. You can ask questions and we can visit later about it just to make sure it's clear. So what you would do with the Word version is you'd fill it out for your your OWP. You'd probably convert it to a PDF, and then you can upload it into grants.gov when you submit your application.
Right, so now we're getting to the fun stuff. We're going to give you directions on how to fill out the OWP form. And on the screen, obviously, is an example of the OWP form. And if you want to follow along in your training manual, the manual has excellent directions on pages 69 and 70. So the first step is to copy and paste your project title, your project goal, your objective, and your outcome. You want to copy and paste that from your narrative. The project title will be the same title you will use throughout your application on like on your electronic SF forms and your project abstract. Next, you'll fill in the project year of the OWP. This is also your budget year. Just keep that in mind. After filling in the project year, you want to start listing your milestone activities. Remember, each objective can have a maximum of milestone activities of 25 milestone activities for each budget period. Along with each milestone activity, you want to enter the appropriate time frame in which that activity will be completed. Make sure the time frame is limited to the year you are filling out. You want to make sure that the project year and the time frame matches. Activities that span more than 1 year must be entered separately each year. So if you have an activity that is going to take 2 years to complete, you'll list that activity in your twice, 1 year of the OWP and then again in another OWP for the next year. After that, the next step is to include an output for each milestone activity. Output should logically result from completing activity. All your activities should be listed in chronological order by start date. In addition, you want to list the staff responsible to complete that activity. And when you are assigning staff to activities, make sure your staff activity justifies the FTE stated in your budget. In the example on page 72 in the training manual, administrative is added before each of the administrative activities. This is not required, but it helps reviewers see that you have included them as required and they are not being counted as one of the 25 milestone activity towards the 25 milestone activity limit. When it comes to the administrative activities, you want to list these at the end of your list after all the activities, all the milestone activities. A list of activities can be found on page, or administrative activities can be found on page 70. This list includes a one-time post-award training in year one and an annual grantee meeting for each project year. Setting up the grant file, staff orientation, data collection, reporting, and evaluation are also considered administrative activities required by ANA. As a result, after one OWP is complete for each year of the project, you will have up to the 25 activity limit, plus up to an additional 6 administrative activities for a total of 31 activities. This total may differ in year 2 and 3, as post-award training and staff orientation, for instance, may no longer be required in years 2 and 3. Thank you for watching this video. We hope this video has been helpful in understanding how to complete the objective work plan. If you have any questions about this video or the ANA application process, our contact information is on the screen. Good luck with your applications, and we look forward to reading them.